Hi, welcome to the part 6 of the Development and World System School chapter lecture of the uh, Marxian Economics course. This lecture is part of the lecture series prepared for the Middle East Technical University Northern Cyprus campus. And in the previous part, actually, I have told on the details of the world system theory and how it defines two distinct systems: world economy and world empire. And now I will basically talk on how our current global economic system has evolved according to the world system theory. Again, it will be kind of a summary, and especially for the there is much more to say after the end of that evolution process. But due to the time limits, I will cut short a little bit the analysis, and if you are interested, you can always look for more. Well, basically, today's world economic system was evolved from a world economic system that was once encompassing just only the Western Europe. And in that system, actually, even though you had much larger companies, the hegemonic powers which were kind of controlling the organized the trade were the Italian city-states. Well, they were small, they were better organized, and you had much larger countries like Spain and France, but they were not as organized as the city-states. So city-states could more exercise more power on the how this economic relations are organized within the Western Europe. And then well, at the 14th and 15th century, the economic system becomes this economic system was kind of overheated, and basically this overheated system had higher population, had increasing population basically, and this increase in population rate in return actually put kind of the existing resources in the Western European countries to its limits. I mean, it brings those resources to its limits. And this crisis was kind of solved when the European powers were able to go to American continent and be able to colonize that continent. Of course, besides American continent, there were also some other colonies, small colonies in Africa and the East Asia. But mainly the American continent and European continent, the Western Europe, of course, we are talking about Western Europe here, have merged into one economic system with the American continental, the colonies in the American continent becoming kind of like the peripheral entities, even though they are part of the same one empire, Spain. They were kind of also like separate entities because they had a different type of economic role. Well, here we had two countries, Spain and Portugal, to become leading countries. However, those two countries were not the countries that were basically organizing the trade between the Europe and the American continent. The city-states of Italy were still the main the organizers of the trade between the American continent and the European nations. And even though we had two countries in place, actually the whole Europe has kind of benefited with this from this economic expansion of the existing system. And that was a time actually when well, one country controls a lot of territory but was not able to organize trade that efficiently. At that time, mostly, I mean, in many cases of the world economies that happened before in history, this one strong country with administrative power has aimed to take over the world economic system and turn it to a world empire. And in Europe, Spain tried that, and Spain at some point has actually a lot of control of a lot of territory in Europe, directly or as client states, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, and get involved with other powers, France, England. There was an uprising in Netherlands later, and that was also a power with which it has struggled, and also with outside powers like Ottoman Empire. So there was a period of this extensive power, extensive extensive war Spain has faced at a certain period. So in and different entities of this world economic system were, including the German and Italian states, were so much economically developed, and people in those areas, in certain areas, not colonies, but in European continent, were so much organized, it became too costly for Spain to build the empire. Actually, it get literally bankrupt, even though it has won a lot of victories. Also, it gone bankrupt, and in the end, there was a small area which was once controlled by Spain, called Netherlands, today's Holland, which was already organizing the trade between. I mean, one of the entities that were organizing trade between the rest of the world and the German states, and in return, this as the trade becomes gets more expanded and becomes more sophisticated, the Italian states were unable to kind of organize the trade any further. So Netherlands took over. So the Dutch traders became the main organizers of the trade between American continent and the European continent, as well as the rest of the world. And usually they had small and strategic colonies, like New York was, for example, one example of that. They lost certain ones, they gained certain ones, but in general, for a time, they had the overall organization and control. And in 17th century, the countries like England and France, which as a result of this increased economic activity, were better in organizing at least the towns of the country, and build some connections, and get some kind of feeling like a nation inside of their countries. Businessmen, and to some extent aristocracy. However, still, they were pretty much disorganized. Different parts of country still feel separate. The villages were still independent. Cities were not that much developed. So they were not able to take over the role of the Netherlands completely, but they were able to do something else. They were able to create their own sub-economic spheres using their state apparatus to convince some countries to trade only with them, with their traders, as well as creating some economic sphere also in the American continent. So these sub-economic spheres, because of the state apparatus, they were able to convince the countries, the state apparatus in different countries, and also organize colonization. Because of the proto-nation building phases, basically, they were also able to make use of this sphere efficiently. So as a result, these spheres were withdrawn from the system. Some countries like Spain and Germany also tried to create their own spheres, but they were relatively unsuccessful at this phase. And however, as they also withdraw, the Netherlandish economic system starts to kind of fail. As a result, within this chaos, this created kind of a chaos within the world European economic system. England and France actually rise over to get the new leadership and bring a new order to this world economy. And in the end, after a long period, long wars that continue for whole 18th century, England won, and basically England became the new hegemony of the world economic system. And the policies of this withdrawing from the existing economic system, that was called mercantilism, by the way. It's not totally withdrawing, but it is actually limiting your trade with the countries outside of your space to the lowest possible point. Well, then you had England as a new hegemony, and England kind of succeeded to take all other actors in the world, the African continent, the people of the African continent, the Australia, India, China, Ottoman Empire, Middle East, completely. All of these different parts of the world, at least geographically, the central, the most critical areas of the world had come within the European world economic system under the hegemony of the England. Well, and England does it also. I mean, all hegemonies, they were actually also producers of the most critical and important goods. But England actually, because of its vast size, it actually has it actually has revolutionized the whole crafts production, the industry itself, and it was actually center. It has become kind of workshop of the world, producing majority of the commodities of the world in most efficient way, especially things like steel and iron. They were produced in England much more efficiently, basically. And well, in time, however, during the 19th century, other European countries become industrialized. So in the beginning, they were dependent to the British production. So that actually brought them into the world economic system. They could not anymore stay away. And in the colonies, they were less organized, and the elites of the colonies were mostly willing to be part of the economic system. Actually, both elites in Ottoman Empire, India, Africa, they were actually willing to be part of the world economic system, even if that participation happens at an inferior status. But in time, this industrialization make the countries of the Europe less dependent to the British goods, and United States was also an example of that kind of a country. On the other hand, the colonies become more developed, the people in the colonies become more organized. At least, I mean, you had a now larger group of people who were organized in the colonies, and they demanded a higher share from the global distribution, as well as some political power to control the way their colony is run, basically. To all of these problems, there was another problem added, which was the labor movement. In the Europe and the United States, basically, labor wanted a higher share from the production, and labor was organized, and they actually, in some extent, wanted even to control the whole production process, while the system kind of was needed to contain the labor, and they didn't know how far they can do it, how far they should suppress it, how far they should allow workers to organize, have some rights, some share from the economic system. And all of these crises were, UK was not able to solve these crises, and as a result, UK's leadership gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Two new countries emerged, and they also got their own sphere of economic spheres and withdraw from the economic system again. The United States had the American continent, and Germany had the Eastern Europe and Ottoman Empire and its sphere. And in the end, there was this, again, struggle to control the world economic system. The struggle was mainly on the main power, existing power, and Germany, but the United States later joined, basically later in both of the major struggles that happened at the time. But in the end, United States won this struggle and became the new hegemony. So We will continue this discussion and end this discussion actually in the next part. So see you in the next part.